The oral proficiency interview. American language testing frameworks have guided language assessment in U.S. government agencies and academic contexts. The New Brunswick Oral Proficiency Interview is based on guidelines established by the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages in the 1960s. The initial guidelines of the oral proficiency interview have been revised twice by the province of New Brunswick, first in 1986 and again in 1999, in an effort to make the interview a more effective and accurate gauge of oral proficiency. The New Brunswick Department of Education has been conducting the OPI since 1977. Is an assessment of language performance in real-life situations. Proficiency testing is curriculum-free. It focuses exclusively on language competence without regards to the place, length of time, or manner in which that competence has been acquired. An individual can get a perfect score on an oral proficiency test only by demonstrating speech production equivalent to that of an educated native speaker of the language. Candidates will always be asked questions for which they are not prepared. This helps the tester acquire the best language sample to evaluate. The aim of the oral proficiency interview is to assess how well a person can speak his or her second language in any given point of time. The oral proficiency interview is valid in the sense that it tests what it says it's going to test, which is the ability to function in a conversational situation. A written assessment, for example, would not be a valid assessment of oral proficiency. As for reliability, the oral proficiency interview is based on well-defined standards and has been verified through multiple external testers. Extensive standardized training and yearly recalibration enhance the reliability of both interviewers and raters. The interview takes place on a one-on-one basis in a quiet room with no interruptions. Oral proficiency interviews have also been conducted sometimes over the phone and over video conference applications such as Zoom, Teams, depending on the situation. The evaluator will greet the speaker and try to set him or her at ease. The interview should be more like a pleasant conversation than an interrogation. The interview will be recorded so that the evaluator can listen again if needed before assigning a proficiency level. The recording will then be reviewed by another evaluator who will also rate it. This is done to monitor the reliability of the interview process. All information is kept confidential and the recording is erased after the proficiency level has been finalized. An interview can last from 10 to 30 minutes and can cover various topics of discussion. The evaluator will be looking for ways to get speakers to perform in the language. The larger the speech sample, the easier it is for the evaluator to assess the performance. The scale comprises 6 main levels where student proficiency is ranked as either unrateable, novice, basic, intermediate, advanced, or superior. To be rated at a given level, students must meet all the criteria listed within that level. A plus may be added to a student's ranking either to indicate a partial attainment of the criteria at the subsequent level or a student's inability to maintain the performance at that higher level throughout the entire interview. During the interview, candidates must be able to draw from their knowledge and skills to demonstrate their ability to perform speech acts, which is listed as function at the top of the table. So speech acts with certain degree of coherence and precision, which is accuracy, in relation to a variety of discussed topics, which is content. Brunswick OPI comprises 4 consistent stages: warm-up, level checks, probes, and wind downs. These stages are important to draw out rateable speech samples, with each stage having a distinct purpose within the interview process. The warm-up helps students who may be uneased by this type of face-to-face interaction. This initial phase constitutes a simple introduction and exchange between the interviewer and candidates, which allows them to get comfortable and possibly generate topics to explore later in the interview. The warm-up accustoms candidates to the target language as spoken by the interviewer, and also situates the interviewer with an initial impression to the candidate's target language abilities. Whereas the level checks positively identify the highest level of competence candidates can sustain, the probe pushes them to the breaking point of their linguistic abilities, either to confirm or to review the proficiency level attributed during the level check stage of the interview. In the final stage of the interview, the wind down leaves candidates with a positive impression of the interview experience. The ice cream cone analogy. So with the functions, content, and accuracy being considered, each level includes a range of abilities. The scale is not straight or rectangle, but shaped like an upside down pyramid or an ice cream cone. At the very bottom of the cone, there is no speech sample in the second language, so it is therefore unrateable. But as we move up the scale, the scope of each level widens. There is more ice cream at each level, and there is a range of ability within each level. Although 2 people may be rated at an intermediate level because both can perform the functions at that level, one person may speak somewhat better than the other or have more to say. Looking at their speech globally, they are both performing at the same level. So here is the New Brunswick Second Language Oral Proficiency Scale, detailing the performance description for all the levels of the assessment. When we include the levels that are in between the main levels, for example, Basic Plus, Intermediate Plus, and Advanced Plus, the scale, as you can see, actually has 9 levels of proficiency. The CEFR also presents a global scale that includes leveled language proficiency descriptions. The CEFR, which stands for the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, is a 3-component assessment tool which comprises a global scale that has 6 levels, so A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, a language portfolio so that the language learner can self-assess, and also a dossier which houses a compilation of the language user's evidence of learning. The CEFR evaluates all 5 language abilities. It is also recognized internationally. Here is an overview of the CEFR language descriptors and their progression from A1 to C2. The language abilities appear on the left and the levels of proficiency at the top of the table. And here's the OPI and the CEFR proficiency scales. This table demonstrates the proficiency levels between the OPI and the CEFR. And finally, the next 2 slides show the OPI proficiency scale performance descriptions and how they compare to the CEFR levels of proficiency. Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Michaud. Thanks for watching the video on the Oral Proficiency Interview, also known as the OPI. While working on my thesis, I researched the communicative competence of early French immersion students on the OPI assessment. So I hope the content of this clip, although brief, has provided you with a better understanding of this interview framework.